Alright, so for today's class, we are looking at how you go about creating data tables. And to start off, there are some things you would have to bear in mind when creating a data table. Now, in creating a data table, you have to understand that there are two things that would normally go into your table. When you're investigating research or taking results from experiment, you have to bear in mind. You have what is called the independent variable and the dependent variable. Normally in creating your data table, your independent variable would go in the left column, the left column, which is the first column in the table, and then the dependent variable would go right here across in the first row and come down. So over here you would have your independent variable over this section of the table, and over here on this side going across you would write your dependent variable. Now let's move down to the experiment. In this experiment, it says the effect of different types of fertilizers on plant growth. So we are researching the effect of different types of fertilizers on plant growth, and what we have decided to do is to divide 12 tomato plants into 3 groups, where each group would contain 4 plants. So the first group here would have 4 plants, the second group would have 4, and the third group would have 4. For the first group of plant, there is no fertilizer. They were watered with plain water or water. For the second group, they were given fertilizer A, and for the third group, they were given fertilizer B. Now, in constructing a table, you must bear in mind that you must have a title at the top of the table here. So for this experiment, you could write as your title, you could write the effect of fertilizer on the height of different plants. The effect of various types. So let me just reread that. The title will be the effect of various types of fertilizer on the height of different plants. When you're going to create your table, first you would need to draw a block box. Then you would divide that box into rows and columns. These are what are called columns. Going down, these are referred to as columns. Going across, these are called rows. So in your experiment, you would decide on the number of rows and columns you would use in your data table. In this data table, we will be using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. In the first column, you notice I have treatment, because in the experiment, the independent variable is the different type of plants that are being treated with different types of fertilizer, and there are 3 groups of plants. The first group, there is no fertilizer that it was treated with. So writing what the independent variables are. Independent variable is no fertilizer was used to treat this group of plant. The second group was treated with fertilizer A, and the third group was treated with fertilizer B. Now, remember that they said that there's 12 plants and they were divided into 3 groups. So this is one group of plants. So this is the first 4 plants that are found in group 1. Plant 1, 2, 3, 4. The second group, plant 1, 2, 3, 4, that are being treated with fertilizer A. And the third group that is being treated with fertilizer B, plant 1, 2, 3, 4. So overall here, we would have 12 plants that we're checking the height of after 3 weeks. So say 3 weeks have passed, and you go back and decide to check the height of the plants. You would begin here in your data table to record the results. So say for instance here, you have 2, 4, 7, 9. These are just some results that you would have gotten for the plants the first group of plants that were not treated with any fertilizer. So the first plant measured 2 centimeters. By the way, in the top of your table here, where you would be recording the dependent variable, you would put the units in which the measurements is being taken. Because you're looking at the height of the plants, you would write centimeter. You always have to include the unit or the measurement that you are working with in the table here. So right here is where you would have the dependent variable. Over here is where you have the independent variable. Remember, the independent variable is what you are changing in the experiment. In this case, you're changing the different type of fertilizers that each plant is being treated with. The dependent variable would be what you are measuring. You are measuring the height of different plants. So for the first group, you measure the height of the plants that were not given any fertilizer. So the first plant measures 2, the second measures 4, the third measures 3, and the fourth measures 9. Then you move on to the next group, which is the second group, which you're using fertilizer A with, and you record the result. Say for this one, you get 10, 12, 16, 20. You're recording the height of each plant. Then you move down here and you're recording the height for the third group of plant that was treated with fertilizer B. So you write the results in your table. 20, 24, 30, 36. So let me do a recap. When you're creating your table, you have to bear in mind that the independent variable will go over this side of the table, the first column here, which is on the left end. So you would write the independent variable here, and your dependent variable would go across. The next thing you have to bear in mind that you must always include a title at the top of your data table. For example here, the effect of various types of fertilizer on the height of different plants. The next thing you would have to do is decide on the number of columns that you will use in your data table, as well as the number of rows. So in this case, I decided to use 5 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And how many rows I decided to use here would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 columns and 5 rows I used to create this data table. Then afterward, you would fill in or label your columns with the appropriate title. Because your independent variable in this experiment is the different treatment that each would receive, which is the different type of fertilizer, you would go ahead and you write treatment here. Then you come down and you write the names of the different fertilizer. Then that's for the independent variable. These are the independent variable because you're changing the different types of fertilizer. Then you come over here, and because you're going to look at the height of different plants, you would write the plant number. So plant 1, plant 2, plant 3, plant 4 in the first group, you record their height. Plant 1, 2, 3, 4 in the second group, you record their height. Plant 1, 2, 3, 4 in the third group, you record their height. So that is how you go about creating a data table. You have to have your title. You must have your independent variable over here, your dependent variable right here, and you must always ensure that you put in your units in your table, as well as you ensure that you label your rows and your columns. And then you are the one who will decide on how much rows and column you would use in your data table when recording your results.